What's up guys, welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/EntitledPeople. Alright, this story's called Nurse Was Annoyed by My Mom's Anxiety. This happened in 2019, when my mom experienced a lot of problems with her COPD and anxiety. Fun fact, anxiety can cause your heart rate, which in then turn, cause your heart rate to rise, I guess, which in then turn can set off a COPD exacerbation. They work together to create a horrible situation. We have since switched which hospital my mother uses because she didn't seem to be getting any better at the previous one, and they pulled a lot of crap. But the main person I remember who is just a royal pain to deal with is a woman we'll call Susie. No offense to anyone called Susie, I just feel like Karen is overused. My first introduction to Susie was when she was going over my mother's medical charts when the exacerbations first started. We'd only been living in our new state for 2 years, and this was our first hospital trip. I think Susie might have been the head nurse. She was looking over my mom's medication and read off buspirone, her anxiety medication. She responds with, "Oh, you're one of those." My mother and I ignored the comment and just kept talking to the woman, explaining my mother's medication, if she didn't take certain pills anymore, etc. Now, because of my mom's anxiety, when she's feeling anxious, she asks a million questions. I'm not sure if it's anxiety related or just her. So when the nurses would come in to give her treatments, my mom would start asking what the medication was, what it was for, if it had side effects, etc. They were trying to find a nebulizer treatment that worked well for her since the albuterol in her older medication was actually causing her heart rate to speed up to dangerous levels. One day she actually got to 160. So during this time, there was always some sort of treatment being swapped out to find one that would work for her, as well as antibiotics to help with an infection in her lungs, which was also part of her problem. The nurses normally didn't have any problem answering her questions, but Susie seemed to. She acted as if she was personally insulted my mom was questioning what she was giving her, which of course kicked my mom's anxiety into overdrive. I was staying in the hospital with her that day and night to keep her calm and help her feel comfortable, so I got a front row seat to all of this. After the first week, Susie eventually would just tell her the name of the medication, but if my mom pressed for any more information on it, she would say something along the lines of, "It's to help you, just take it," which of course my mom would not want to take it. Cue me trying to talk her into taking it, and Susie getting annoyed. Eventually, I just started Googling everything to find out what it was, since Susie, just for some reason, decided her hill to die on was not letting my mom know the exact information about the medication she was giving her. I guess she wanted my mom to trust her, but due to her attitude, that was never gonna happen. I just figured maybe Susie was just tired of my mom's constant questions, and I could understand that. I sometimes myself get a little annoyed when she asks 10 different questions, sometimes repeating the questions over and over, but I'd rather be a little annoyed than have her anxious or upset because it makes her breathing worse and increases her heart rate to sometimes dangerous levels. We're in the middle of our second week, and fun fact about nebulizer treatments, they will make your hand shake uncontrollably. My mom was getting tired of trying to hold the nebulizer in her hand and to her mouth due to her shaking, and at some point I or the nurse on duty at the time had to hold it for her. One day, one little nurse came in. We'll call him Carl, and he was a sweet guy. He finally suggested to my mom about having her wear a mask so she could be hands-free and take her treatment. My mom was happy to hear that there was an alternative and asked if she could try it. Carl leaves, and while my mom finishes the treatment, Susie is the nurse that returns, and she begins telling my mom that she doesn't need the mask, that the masks are for patients that can't hold the nebulizer on their own due to problems like arthritis. I tried explaining to her how bad my mom's hands shake, and her response was, "Yeah, it's the medication, it'll do that." I tell her I know, and I just want my mom to be more comfortable. Susie, however, dismisses this by telling me it's better for my mom to just hold it before saying she had other patients she needed to take care of and left. I didn't really understand how making my mom try to hold on to something while she's struggling just to take a deep breath was helping her, but whatever, I guess. A few hours later, about 30 minutes before my mom's next treatment, bam! She starts having an exacerbation where she's struggling to breathe. I hit the nurse's call light, and in rushes Carl. Carl quickly helps get a treatment ready, but my mom is struggling to hold on to the nebulizer. I'm trying to keep my mother calm, and at one point, her hand begins to shake so bad she can barely keep the nebulizer in her mouth. I asked Carl if he could please find her a mask so she could properly take her treatment as I held the nebulizer for her. I felt like having the mask would ease her a bit. Carl seemed to hesitate. He said he would look after my mom became a bit more stable. Halfway through the treatment, my mom is finally taking in deep breaths, and Carl leaves to find a mask. Instead, Carl returns with Susie and another nurse I hadn't seen before. Susie once again tells my mom she doesn't need a mask. I tell her to look at my mom, saying that she can barely hold on to the nebulizer on her own. Carl agrees with me, saying it wouldn't hurt to let her just have a mask. Susie walks over, examines the contents in the nebulizer, then says, "She's almost halfway done anyways. There's no point in getting her one now." I'm so angry, but I'm keeping myself in check because if I get angry, it'll only stress my mother out. I couldn't believe she was being this stubborn over a non-issue like this. But I hadn't seen the worst of Susie yet. Susie then goes on a rant about how my mom is making their job more difficult, that she can't just have one of her little anxiety attacks when she doesn't get her way, that she needs to learn to calm herself down, which is hard to do when you can't freaking breathe. My mom, hearing this woman talk about her anxiety as if it's a child having a tantrum, starts getting upset and actually stops taking her treatment to tell her off the best she was able, saying that she would love to be able to breathe so she didn't have to be here and wish she could calm down, but that Susie was making that nearly impossible for her when she tried to prevent her doing anything that helped her keep calm at every turn. Susie said that my mom needs to learn to get over things, and then turns to Carl and starts berating him for giving my mom a nebulizer treatment 30 minutes ahead of schedule. Carl just sheepishly stares at her and apologizes. I really felt bad for him. Now, Susie is not really talking in a calm voice, but she's not outright yelling either. She kind of had a volume between the two and was doing nothing to hide the annoyance in her tone. My mom's heart rate reached to around 140 beats per minute, and Susie finally relented and allowed Carl to get her the mask attachment. My mom was able to go hands-free, leaning over and hugging onto her bed pillow as she calmed herself, her taking in a deep breath after so long and after such a stressful situation in my top 10 most relieving moments. The next morning, Susie didn't come in to let my mom know there was a shift change, which was odd as they normally do this so you can know who your nurse is. Instead, the nurse on the next shift comes in and goes to give my mom her buspirone. My mom stops when she sees the cup and asks why there's so many. I stand up and look into the cup. My mom normally took half of a buspirone, sometimes a whole one on her bad days. However, in the cup, there was 3 whole buspirones. The nurse looked on the computer and informed my mom her dosage had been upped, and then frowned, stating that she didn't know if it was a good idea if she should take that much, and if my mom didn't want to, she could see about lowering the dosage. I asked her who upped the dosage, and she told me it must have been whichever nurse was in charge of my mother's care before her shift started, meaning it was Susie. My mom joked about how she wanted to keep her calm by having her lay in bed daydreaming and drooling on herself, aka lay her out. But on the inside, I was quite angry. I know handling someone with anxiety can be a handful at times. I have anxiety myself, though I'm able to keep mine under control, unlike my mother. And I've had to keep my mother calm at her worst of times, and with the COPD combined with this, it isn't always an easy task. But this woman was being stubborn, at every turn refusing to do little things to help keep my mother's anxiety down. But now she was upping her medication because of it? No, not happening. When my mom was finally well enough to be released, Carl came to check on her and said goodbye. I told Carl I thought he was really sweet, but that I wouldn't be bringing my mother back. He frowned and asked if it was because of Susie. I told him yes. Carl shrugged it off and said, "Yeah, she can be pretty nasty to patients that have anxiety. I personally think that she thinks it's fake or something." Carl's words cemented my choice not to bring my mom back to that hospital. While I don't think Susie thought anxiety was fake, at least with her being a nurse, I would hope not, but she did act like dealing with people who had it annoyed her. I also doubt that if she didn't believe anxiety was a thing, then she wouldn't have upped my mom's medication dosage. Sadly, the next time my mom would have difficulties, the ambulance driver was afraid to drive to the other hospital I had chosen, as my mom was in bad shape and didn't want to risk the extra 20-minute drive, so we returned to that hospital again. We did have some trouble with some of the staff, as well as a very unpleasant experience, but I didn't see Susie at all during that visit. About 3 days in, I saw Carl and asked him about it. He said that Susie had quit to work at another hospital, and he didn't really know very many details about it. We did end up switching hospitals, and they helped my mom with her lung issues and went above and beyond. They set her up with a physical therapist. The amount of time spent laying in bed caused my mother's muscles to atrophy, and she couldn't walk. And they treated her gently, always keeping in mind that my mom's anxiety directly affected her COPD. They did whatever they had to in order to keep her calm, and since then, my mom hasn't needed to return to the hospital. The nurses work hard and deal with a lot. I know this. I also know how difficult it must be dealing with unruly patients. And I won't say my mom wasn't annoying them by asking 20 questions about her medication. However, it was her right to know what she was being given, and Susie's reactions to these questions, or the insisting my mother didn't need a mask attachment, just felt like willful stubbornness. Now, if my mom had been cussing or throwing an actual tantrum, I would have maybe understood a little bit of Susie having such an attitude. But the only time my mother ever snapped at her was when she was outright refusing her the mask during her exacerbation. Regardless, the only thing I miss from the other hospital is Carl, and I hope he's doing alright. Yeah, cool guy Carl, we need more of him. Less Susie though, she sucked. Sucky Susie versus cool guy Carl. The battle of the ages. Yeah, we're gonna be serving hot dogs with lots of relish and mustard. Relish, not so much actually. I'm not that huge of a fan, unless it's like a more sour as opposed to sweet relish, and like it has a bit of a texture, but like mustard is a must. Mustard is a must. I love mustard. It's my favorite condiment. I'm comfortably saying that now. I used to be scared of it. I used to be scared of mayo too, because you know like ketchup water and mustard water when you don't shake it? I used to be terrified that like one day I'd like squirt mayo and like mayo water would come out. But obviously that's not how it works, because like, you know, it's literally just like egg and oil emulsion. But anyway, mustard's like the best condiment, hands down. Alright, this story's called Entitled Resident at T5 Medical School Wants to Send Me Home Right After a Neurosurgery. Then, right after, I end up back in ER. So I went to a local hospital. It's the main hospital for a T5 school, so it's pretty good. All my doctors are incredible. Now, I go in for a normal brain surgery. Normal, yeah, of course. I have an implant in my skull attached to my brain to control seizures. This surgery wasn't to do much besides replace the device in my skull, not change the connectors to my brain. They did a fine job. Then wake up, and after the anesthesia wears off, I'm told, "You can go home now." I was thinking, what? Who are you? She responds, "I'm the doctor," under obviously means resident, "doctor who did my neurosurgery. We think you can go home now." But I've only been off anesthesia for 40 minutes. "Yeah, but you're a healthy young man," male 22. "Just take the painkillers and follow the plan we set up. You'll be fine." My mom gets pissed and argues. The resident lies to my neurosurgeon and says my mom was demanding to speak to him. He still had like 10 more surgeries. He gets mad and my mom is shocked. This resident cut the cord from the start. They say I agreed to leave, but that was because of the pressure from the resident. My mom argues that I was rushed while recovering from anesthesia and surgery. I get an outpatient bed because of my mom and sent home the next morning. Then I get screwed up and end up in the ER 20 hours later. My mom is pissed. "He had neurosurgery. You should have watched him for a full day and this could have been prevented." "Well, ma'am, we did some tests yesterday." First day in the ER. "Now we see it's a neurological issue, not a neurosurgery, so we're sending him home. Also, we need these post-surgery beds for critical cases." Guess who? The same resident. My mom is furious. Like, seriously, that statement coming from this doctor ignited her. She yelled, "If you determined it's neurological during his first day in the ER, why are you discharging him today? Send him to neurology or I'll file a complaint on you, and we both know what patient neglect complaints can do to a resident's future. This doctor gets scared and sends me to neurology for the next 4 days where I actually get helped. But seriously, this hospital was fine, but this resident, who had just finished medical school, had such a superiority complex she tried to shove me out regardless of what I said. Like, I don't feel well this way or that way. Jeez, man, this is scary. Like, people could just do that. Like, doctors and everything. Wow, both of these are medical related. That's crazy. But like, both of these stories are incredibly concerning because you don't know what you're gonna get when you go to a hospital, unless it's like some sort of like fancy schmancy hospital for like rich kids. But like, what about the poor kids? They don't have much of a choice, especially if you're poor. They give less of a crap about you. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.